Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm sitting in the Dry Creek Valley with Bernie Orsi of Orsi Family Vineyards. Bernie, welcome to Wine Soundtrack, and tell us about Orsi Family Vineyards.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here. Orsi Family Vineyards is a small operation that started back in 1990 and has basically grown very, very modestly over the years. We're sitting here in the middle of a piece of property. It used to be a cattle ranch years ago and a hunting preserve. And a lot of wild pigs, other type of wild, and deer. A lot of deer hunters would come up here. And 1990, the family that owned it put it up for sale. And I bought it and slowly started to develop vineyard and other, as you see, little activities around here that are conducive to holding a family together.
Like a beautiful pool and barbecue and jungle gym that I see set among the vineyards.
Something for all ages.
So how many acres is your property and how much vineyard do you have planted?
There's 200 acres total up here. It's about 1,000 feet off the valley, the Dry Creek Valley floor, which makes it a tad warmer. But in the evenings, it makes it a tad cooler. So there's a real difference in the climate, even up here from down in the valley floor. Of the 200 acres, there's about 55 planted to mostly Cabernet. There's some Chardonnay, and there's some Pinot Noir back in a shady spot. But primarily what we have is... primarily we have the Cabernet and the Chardonnay, and then we have this little side venture of about 6-7 acres of Italian varietals.
And how many different Italian varietals does that make up?
Well, at last count, it was 12.
Wow.
So, but we're looking at for a couple more. We want to try to do a couple. Everything seems to do well. The irony of all this is we've got varietals that grow in northern Italy right next door to southern Italian varietals, and you can taste for yourself and see that they really express themselves and maintain their integrity.
And what is the total case production?
Well, we've been doing 1,000 cases the last couple of years to 1,100, something like, and if we don't experiment with other things like rosé, that adds to it a little bit. Everybody has to have a rosé today, you know.
When it's 90 degrees outside, you understand why.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with a Biancolella at 90 degrees either.
No, this crisp Bianconello de Ischia is beautiful.
That's it, the Ischia. That's where my mother was born.
Ah.
And on a visit back there one time looking for some relatives, we landed in a restaurant. And typical of the Italians, this guy was going to take care of us. So he rolled out all the best fishes he had and everything, and then rolled out the wine. And we started drinking it, and before you know it, we had drank about a case of this wine. What the hell is this? It's pretty good. So we checked it out, and it turned out to be Biancolella. And that was how I started my interest in getting some Biancolella planted here.
Huh. And what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Well, you're reminding me. I reminded myself of it about a week ago. As a little kid, my grandfather used to make wine in the alley behind his house in San Pedro, California. They would go down to the local poultry, who seemed to have everything fresh in town, and he would buy the grapes by the lug. And they probably came from here, but a lot from Cucamonga. They'd buy the grapes by the 50-pound lug, bring it over there, with every fly in that part of San Pedro would go with it, and we'd make the wine.
Wow. So once you were past the alley wine, what is one of the most memorable wines you ever drank, and what was the occasion?
Boy, I tell you, I never met a wine I didn't like, so that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Memorable? I don't know. I think, and I don't remember, I think we were in Montalcino, and I had a Barolo there. and I thought that was pretty good. And we had a Brunello as well. Those two, I think, were the two most memorable that I can recall, both in Italy.
Mm-hmm. So, traveling the world abroad, would you say that the Italian wines are the best you've had, or was there something else that has stood out?
Well, I haven't traveled that much outside of Italy, but I did go to South America. There was nothing down there that caught my attention. No, I think I've been to France. You know, French wines are polite wines. They greet you at the door and say goodbye when you're finished. Italian wines kind of sit down and have the meal with you. You follow me? They want you to be more. They want to be more involved with you. So I found the Italian wines to be more robust, more friendly, so on. There's no bias in that or anything.
So if we were to enter your cellar here at your home, I'm not asking how large it is, but what would we find in there?
You know, you'd find a lot of stuff that nobody likes, because that's why it's still in there. And you'd probably find a lot of an old brand that I did with a friend of mine named Lawrence Papali from St. Helena, called Orsi Papali. That was our first commercial juncture. And what we didn't drink and didn't sell is in there. And there are other things. There's a few other odds and ends. From around Dry Creek, we get out and wine taste once in a while and buy a little wine. Like taking coals back to Newcastle, you know.
So when it comes to grapes and the different grape varieties out there, do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
Well, I think that, I don't think perfect, but I think that there are varieties that are the right year and with the perfect storm of weather, soil, the way the year winds out. For example, this year, we had late rains. Everybody said, "Oh, this is terrible," but the grapes weren't blooming. So they just took a bath. We have a more than adequate Cabernet crop in Sonoma County. Chardonnay crop is sizing up very well because there's a lot of moisture in the ground, and those berries are fattening up pretty quick. Pinot Noir seems decent, and that's all on top of what was a blockbuster year last year. So it all depends on so many different things. And now, we've got a lot of humidity this year, so there's a lot of mildew pressure. We find ourselves spraying a lot more just to keep this thing under control, because it's just, I just got back from over in the Russian River this morning, and it's pretty tough over there. There's some places that already have early season botrytis, which generally you don't see at this point. So the lower areas where it stayed wet longer, where there wasn't good drainage in the lagoon over there, they got some issues. So it all depends on a variety of things.
Mm-hmm. So getting down to drinking wine, red, white, or rosé?
Well, for me, red.
Still or sparkling?
Still.
And food and wine pairing. Obviously, you said that an Italian wine is a wine that wants to stick with you through the whole meal. How do you approach food and wine pairing?
Whatever wine's there, I will drink with the food I'm having.
No other thought.
I will not forego having a glass of wine because I'm eating a steak and there's only white wine. That's for sure. I'll just drink twice as much of the white wine. No, I don't mean that. I don't understand. Really don't understand wine pairing and food. I guess on a very nuanced level. Just like there's major leaguers and there's minor leaguers. I mean, maybe some people can taste all these things. I go to wine tastings at wineries with, the grapes that we sell, and I hear things like nutmeg and onion and a little this and a little basil. I think I'm having a salad instead of a glass of wine. Did you get that hint of Hawaiian tropical bonanza? No, I didn't. Where was that? What flight was that on? So it depends. I mean, when you like the glass of wine you have. Yeah.
So for someone who hasn't tasted your wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Well, I think they're missing out on the variety of them. I think if they're stuck in the Cab, Chardonnay, Zinfandel, Merlot, Pinot trap, they're missing out on some different flavors. They're missing out on different fruit. They're missing out on, a little different texture. which they should try. They should, take a shot at it.
And what is your opinion on wine critics and scores?
Well, I love wine critics that give you high scores.
Perfect answer.
Yeah, but I know that, that's a tough thing. But, in our case, we're small enough that they couldn't make us or break us, so it doesn't really matter to me. I guess, they serve a purpose. It's like any other handicapper. You go to the racetrack, some guy tells you this is the favorite. You bet on him, he loses. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's like wine. Some guy says this is 98 points. You try it and you go, what the hell's the big deal here? So it's all relative.
Yeah. So if space aliens were to land on this gorgeous property of yours, which of the wines in your portfolio would you want to introduce them to?
Well, I'd want to find out if they want to sell the spaceship first. The wine they can get anywhere. But where the hell would we get a spaceship? I mean, that'd be a cool thing, wouldn't it?
It would. So
I don't think I'd have to sell the wine anymore. I'd just put a sign up, come and see the spaceship. That'd be the simple way to do that one.
Okay, so if you're going to exchange them, you want to take their spaceship, what are you going to give them in exchange?
Whatever they want. They can have the whole damn place. If I can't make a buck for that spaceship, forget about it.
Okay, let's talk about vintage.
All right, vintage.
You were talking about, this season and everything. Do you, in the years that you've been living here and growing grapes, do you see more variation from year to year or more similarities?
Overall similar, but we have had some bombs. 98 sticks in my mind, a couple of others where it was, at the end of the year, you just went, oh, man, how the hell are we going to pay for all this, It was bad, and crop was bad. We've had other years where frost and late season diseases have affected the vines. But by and large, we're pretty fortunate here. Across an average, it's not bad. It's a good growing region. Look at right now as we're talking, you see this breeze. This is the greatest thing we could have because it keeps everything dry. Mm-hmm. And for example, if there is any mildew starting or getting excited out here, this is its enemy, the hot breeze. It's his enemy. Not a humid breeze, but a hot breeze. So that's what we like. It keeps things under control. So by and large, and I think that's why, those old Italians that came over here in the 1800s just said, we're at home. Mm-hmm. This is home. Stick a few cuttings in the ground and let's go. And that's what happened.
Do you look for any predictors that are going to kind of tell you an outcome of a harvest?
Biggest one's the weather. And then, some people do what are called dissections, bud dissections. They do that just about after bud break, and they try to determine what looks like what's going to form out of that bud. 1 bunch, 2 bunches, big bunches, little bunches. It's kind of a sophisticated science, but it's pretty good. But that's in the season that it's happening. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, there's a lot of people that think that if you have a cloudy and a gloomy spring, it affects the next year's bud because it doesn't get any light. So that even though it has to be translucent, it has to have that light to formulate its entire self. So, for example, last year we had a rainy, gloomy season. Or I should say this year. So if that theory pans out, next year should be pretty rough.
So do you have any traditions that you and your team do at the start of harvest?
At the start?
Or during or after?
We pray at the start, we pray during, and we celebrate at harvest. When the last truck rolls out, that's it, man.
Wine Soundtrack, the voice of American wine growers and makers.
So, they say that many producers are known for walking through their vineyards and talking to their vines or talking to the wines in the barrel. Have you been known to talk to your wines? And if so, what do you say to them?
No, I don't talk to anything that doesn't talk back, thank God, because that's all that would be left to qualify me for further interment, No, but you do go through and, you look at them, some people go, they're like, they're not children, they're grapevines, but you do see, if you see something that distresses you, you want to take care of it, maybe a nutrient deficiency or an emitter's not putting enough water on a vine and that one vine looks out of order, So you're concerned, but, I don't take it on a familial basis.
So, Bernie, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know, because I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still trying to figure that out. I didn't know. I didn't have any. We didn't have much, and I never thought I would either. So life's been a lot of breaks for me. Things just went the right way, and never had any singular purpose.
So when you're not busy with your non-singular purpose, what do you do in your free time? What do you do for fun?
Actually, I have fun doing this. That's the point. I don't need to have other fun. No, I manage a company that's a charitable trust and owns a lot of real estate. So I do that. Prior to that time, I was executive vice president of Pabst Brewing Company, which was one of our holdings. And we basically owned every label except Bud Miller and Coors in those days. If you could name a name, and I probably, I don't know where you're from, or L.A. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, L.A. only had Miller, and before your time, it had East Side Brewing Company, which we ran out of town down there with Brew 102. I don't know any of these folks that are listening have ever heard of Brew 102. If they have, they're pretty vintage themselves. But nevertheless, that we were the number one beer in Los Angeles County with Brew 102 in the 1950s. I wasn't there, but when I showed up, we owned Falstaff, Lucky Lager. Then we bought Pabst, Schlitz, Olympia.
So they always say that what does it take to make great wine is great beer. And, I guess how do you get into the wine business? You leave the beer business.
Yeah, well, I left reluctantly. We had to sell it because of the internal revenue requirements on charitable foundations. And then after that, I went to I bought an interest in Lagunitas. And that didn't last very long because Heineken bought them out. But I've been more time in beer than I have in wine.
So, are you a supporter of any sports teams?
Yeah, I support a lot of teams, but if I name a team, everybody drinks wine. So if you name a team, all 25 guys that are the other teams won't drink it. That's like the old story. That's like the old story about, are you a Democrat or Republican? What the hell, they all drink, don't they? So I'm all of them.
What was the best piece of advice you've received?
Oh, boy, I've gotten so much good advice over the years, both by word and by example. I've watched how people that, have done things. And I guess, the best advice is more a lifestyle observation than, don't go across the red light or something like that. It's where you put first things first. You don't leave anything for tomorrow that you can do today. That drives me crazy when things, I'll find out about it tomorrow, next week. It's unsettling. I got to get it done. It's got to be done. And so that basis, I find and that's that old saying, if you pay attention to the small things, the big things take care of themselves. That's pretty much the case. If you maintain an orthodox, precise lifestyle where you do the first things first, generally you'll have time and availability to do the other things.
And if you could offer advice to our listeners beyond the sage advice you just were talking about, what might you tell them? I
would tell them as soon as they get through listening to this to get on the website and buy a couple of cases of this wine before we run out.
There's the marketing spiel. Okay. What would you say is your proudest achievement to date in your work? In your work, because obviously family and other things would probably take precedence. But
well, I guess a couple of things that I shortly after the founder of the company that I mentioned earlier died, he had left. We had a lot of brewery sites around the country, and they were just sitting there doing just dilapidated, falling apart. And I sat down one day with a fellow, and we talked about developing them, and I had never developed anything. I had never built anything up to that point. So he talked me into it, and we started doing things, and we built a big wholesale warehouse in San Francisco for a big retailer. We built 239 houses on another of our brewery properties, Lucky Lager property in San Francisco. We built some office space up in Portland, Oregon at the old Lucky Lager up there. So that to me, because it was something I had no idea about. Wine, it's pretty simple. Wine is not complicated. To grow grapes, anybody can grow grapes. Just stick a grapevine in your backyard, you're going to have grapes. And a lot of people can make wine if they understand biology and chemistry. It takes some skill to make wine. Toughest thing about this business is selling the wine. That's the problem. But in the real estate business, I had never done any of that kind of thing, so I had no idea what it entailed. And those projects have turned out to be very, very successful. So that's pretty much, I'd say, the highlight.
Okay, complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
Sahara Desert.
Okay. So imagine a situation. A restaurant, someone or some people sitting at a table. Paparazzi come by, snap an image of that famous person, living or dead, and famous in your mind. And on that table is one of your bottles of wine. Who would you want to be drinking your wine?
Tommy Lasorda. Pasta King.
That is not what I would have ever imagined hearing, but...
Who'd you think?
I don't know.
Politicians are out because they're full of baloney, right? So, but the best guy I could think of would be Tommy Lasorda. Used to cook pasta every night after the game. If I'd have known him then, I would have made sure we had the wine in there.
So, do you think that we'll still be drinking in 100 years of time, 300 years time or more?
Some of us will be. Some of us will be.
Okay, maybe not individually.
Especially if you're drinking the right wine, longevity is almost assured. You won't even know what happened, in fact. I think, the times change, but I mean, if you think about it, I forgot to tell you, I was in Egypt, too, when I said I didn't travel anywhere. I was in Egypt, but I didn't find any wine there.
I wouldn't think so.
I found some wine in Israel that wasn't too bad. Mm-hmm. But going back to that question, when you look at the hieroglyphics on some of those temples, people were drinking wine. What are those things? 2,000-3,000 years old, 4,000 years old. So a couple hundred years is like not much time when you compare it to history. Yeah. And what are the alternatives? What alternative has actually taken wine down over the centuries? Nothing. Everything has its day. You get up and down. Since I've been in college, I mean, we've gone bourbon, vodka, gin, rum, up and down. Things have gone up and down, but wine just kind of and if we really ever do, if it ever does become, a staple on the table, like the loaf of bread and what have you, then it'll be a different game. But it's been tough for Americans to buy that theory.
Well, if unfortunately, it was the end of the world and you ended up on a deserted island, what 3 bottles would you take with you?
Well, what 3 bottles would I take?
3 wines. I won't limit your
these
thoughts.
Of my varietals. No. I would take a Biancolella. Okay. I probably would take the Sagrantino and that spaceship you talked about earlier, so I could get the hell out of there.
So you'd only take your wine?
Yeah. Why? Well, what the heck? I mean, Yeah. I mean, why should I? Yeah, I would take mine. I can't. I got to tell you, I really, over the years, I've just kind of withdrawn from the general wine market. As opposed years ago, I had all kinds of. We used to get, but now. Wines that used to pay $30, $40 or $50, they want $300, $400, $500 a bottle for. You have to apologize to the cork for taking it out. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry I have to do this to you. It's terrible. I can't drink a wine. That's just like going to a restaurant and spending a lot. I can't spend a lot of money to go to I used to take my mother out to dinner, and the check would come, and she would say, oh my God, we could eat for a week on this. What are you doing? Are you out of your mind? So that was, how I was raised. I mean, I just can't see spending all that money. I don't, it may well be worth it, but, not to me.
Well, as you're drinking your wine, we play a little game at Wine Soundtrack. It has wine and music.
Oh.
A lot of people like to listen to music when they drink. A lot of times you think of certain moods that you're in when you drink certain wines. So of your wines, if you were drinking like this Biancolello, what would you be listening to?
Probably listening to an Italian playing the accordion in the background, not on a gondola, but just, sitting on a barrel or something, asking me if I needed another glass.
Okay, and what about your Aglianico?
Aglianico? Well, I tell you, maybe... Aglianico, I'll tell you, maybe, what's his name? Bocelli. Listen to him apologizing for something in Italian.
And Primitivo.
Primitivo's Sicilian, that's that southern Italian, so you'd have to have maybe some rapid machine gun fire in the background or something like that.
And the Schioppettino.
Schioppettino is kind of romantic grape, It's named after its bottom, actually. The end of the cone of the grape bunch is broken open. Some say it's in the form of a heart. Some say it's for like a shotgun blast, and that's where the name Scolpa comes from. So you might want to be listening to a little heavier, something heavier, I don't know, Tchaikovsky or something banging on the deal, more of a wartime chant.
From romantic to wartime chant.
That's right.
So, Bernie, before we go today, if there was one winemaking region in the world that was at the top of your list to go visit, where would it be?
Well, I've been there, and I'd go back, and I'd continue, and that would be the whole Chianti area, the whole near Florence. You can't beat it. I mean, it's just beautiful. Everything's there. It's laid back. It reminds you a lot of this in a lot of ways. So, yeah, it would be around there. That would be it for me.
So thank you for joining us today. And before we go, if you can just let our listeners know where they can find you and your wines. Can they come and visit? Where can they find you online?
Well, we are online, Orsi Family Vineyards, and you'll find we have a shop there and a little description of our wines, where the grapes come from. Our motto is Italian roots in Sonoma County soil. And if they would like, we do arrange for private tours, which I'm going to give you one in a little while, and tastings. But we do encourage a purchase with that, because we have to put the gas back in the gator when we get through driving around. But nevertheless, if someone finds themselves in Sonoma County and they want to see more, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll try to work something out.
Fantastic. Well, grazie per
Grazie
essere
tanto.
qui oggi.
Ora beviamo,
Andiamo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.